Yo, boys and girls, it's your boy Peter, aka Peter Freakout 10, baby. What's going on, bitches, hoes, men, women, children, word up, whatever the fuck you say. It is time for another episode of the Movie Review Show, where the good movies are always reviewed. Okay, back into our movie review today, and it's October. You know what that means? ScreamFeast! Alrighty, boys and girls. It is that time of the year again. It is October. Halloween's just around the corner. A time for heavy metal dudes to get into their best makeup, candy, ghosts, goblins, whatever the fuck you are. It is that time. October is that time to get crazy, horrific, and nobody can call you crazy. It is that time for horror movies too. Even though I watch them every day, so it doesn't count for me. But it's a great time to pick up the DVDs of your favorite horror films and just start watching them. And this year was the time that I had to talk about this film. This is a film that if you are a horror fan, you have probably know of this film. You have heard the title. You have heard people talk about it. It is a film that lives on in infamy in the horror community. And it is a film that quite literally I think everybody knows about because when it came out, it was the target of every just sensitive person who has never seen a film like this. It was around the time the slasher genre was really getting up on its knees, and it was the film that quite literally put its own director in hot water. And what film is that, you may be asking? That film is none other than the infamous Maniac. And for those wondering, this is actually a new DVD that I picked up recently. I'm going to show it in an update, or I probably may not, but this is a new version of the film that I got. This is a Blue Underground that is a company that's started by its own director, who I'll get into. But yeah, very cool DVD right here, and a lot of extras too. Commentary by the producer and the director, William Lustig, the special effects artist who I'll get into, the editor and the assistant to the main actor and the writer, a radio interview with the co-producer and director and the stars. There's like a story about the main star of the film, trailers, TV spots, radio spots. You can look at the gallery of outrage where basically they took a bunch of snippets from the time that this movie came out showing who was outraged by it and put it all into one. It's all on this DVD and a bunch of other stuff too. But what can be said about Maniac? Well, in order to figure out what needs to be said, let's grab ourselves a knife, our double-barreled shotgun, and let's take a trip to New York where we find out that a psycho is on the loose. Let's see why Maniac is the reason we were warned not to go out tonight. Now, Maniac, this is a film made in 1980, and this is directed by a guy named William Lustig. Now, William Lustig, for a time, this was actually a guy who was a big name in the horror industry. And I know some people may be like, if he was so big, why haven't I heard of him? He stopped directing in the late 90s, but for a time, he was actually a big name. And basically, he still is, but under a new way, because after he stopped directing, he went off to start his own company called Blue Underground, where he's helping restore horror films that have never seen a DVD release. And what's funny about his start as a director is that he actually started off directing porno. I kid you not. That was literally his start. And it kind of is easy to see with this film, considering some of the actresses, not all of them, but a couple of them But this is the movie that got him known, and it's quite literally the movie that almost got him killed, considering people's reaction to that, but I'll get into that later. Afterwards, he did Vigilante, he did the Maniac Cop trilogy. The third one was in the 90s, 93, Maniac Cop 3, Badge of Silence. And that's an infamous film considering its hard production, and I know he has some things to say about the film. He also directed The Expert with Jeff Speakman, which I know he left halfway during production, being that he was annoyed with Jeff Speakman, and he was like, I can't deal with this guy. And the last film he directed, and I know this is going to be hearsay to some people, but that's probably my favorite film of his, Uncle Sam. I know it's not for everybody, but I love it. I'll review that another time. But not much is known about this film or why they decided to make it. All I know is that this is a script written by two people, one of them being the main lead himself, Joe Spinell. And I know he was very passionate about this film. I know that he drew influence from David Berkowitz. One kill in particular was inspired by one of his murders. And I know the budget was raised by William Lustig himself. I know he got the money from one of his pornos called Hot and Honey. Yes, that's a literal name of that. And because of how low budget this film was, they had to shoot the film very guerrilla style. And because they didn't have the right to shoot in that area, sometimes folks would see this and they would call the cops and they would have to film a scene quickly and run away before the cops got there. And Tom Savini actually came in to help with the effects. This was around the time he was doing the effects for Friday the 13th, and he hit it big with Dawn of the Dead. And he considers this to be the movie that he went too far with. You know you've done something right when even Tom Savini's like, I went too far with that. But they finished up production after a certain amount of time, and upon knowing that this movie would be destroyed by the MPAA, they decided not to submit it to them and release the film unrated, which is why this DVD right here has a not rated sticker on it. And with the budget, this film was a hit when it came out. It was making over $10 million in its run, and it's unknown how it did in its opening weekend, but this was still a good hit for William and his crew. But oh my God, this film came in the crosshairs of critics who ripped it to shreds. And like I mentioned in other videos with Mother's Day and the Friday the 13th films, this was around the time critics were aiming hard for slasher films as they were disgusted by them. And this film especially, I think, was the tip of the iceberg for them at the time because they were appalled by the film's violence, subject matters. It was banned in several countries and states. William felt the burn as he dealt with angry letters from people wishing death upon him. Women were painting over the advertisements to this movie. And there's that infamous story where Gene Siskel actually got up and left the theater because of that infamous disco boy scene with Tom Savini. And they even started painting the audience who went to see this movie as people who hated women, which I think is a load of bullshit, because just because somebody watches a film at the time, that does not mean they hate women. They're looking to be entertained. If you're watching a snuff film, yes, that's a different story. But the fact that they went out of their way to attack people who liked it, say they're psychos, that's a fucking bullshit thing to do. And at the time, it was just a film that nobody could enjoy because of its publicity. However, since its release, years after its release, I should say, despite a Rotten Tomatoes rating of 37% and an audience rating of 58%, a lot of people consider this movie a cult classic. Even Rue Morgue themselves actually like the film. That's a magazine company, much like Fangoria. Some of the most unprecedented, graphically detailed depictions of violence ever put before a viewing audience, says Rue Morgue. Yeah. And I know the guys at Dead Pit. If you guys know Dead Pit, they're a fantastic radio show that I listen to. They talk about horror movies. Creepy Kentuckian and Uncle Bill, they're big fans of this film. I know Eli Roth is a huge fan of this film, being that one of the posters for Hostel is a homage to that movie. And on IMDb, it is a 6.4 out of 10. So a lot of people like it. What's funny for me with this movie is how I found out about it. And it was surprisingly not by the controversy, because I wasn't around for that bullshit back then. But it was back when I was starting to get into horror, and I discovered how to use the internet and a computer. Surprisingly, the internet was nothing like it is back then. We have really gone beyond what it was, and it was very easy for me to get into it and use it. That was how I got a hold of it. But I came across the trailer to this film like, Maniac, what the fuck is that? And that was a fantastic trailer. It was creepy, it was atmospheric. I loved just the gore in it, because they showed a lot of gore in the trailer, enough of it to a certain extent, so that when you see the final film, it doesn't ruin it for you. And pretty much, it's funny to say that, because a few months after that, I actually found out about Uncle Sam when I rented the Freedom Strike movie on VHS, and they had a trailer on it, and the narrator for the trailer went, "From filmmaker William Lustig, director of Maniac." I'm like, oh god, the guy who did Maniac did that. I want to check that out. I didn't see it though around the time, because at the time, I've gone on about this, my parents were very picky about what I would watch. And I knew if I showed the trailer of this to them, even just the poster, they would be like, no, you are not watching that. Especially if they heard about the controversy this movie caused. I mean, I came of age and was allowed to see it, but by the time I was just like, it doesn't look like it interests me, especially when I hear about the controversy and how much people were so up in arms about the movie. But after I saw Saw years later, I was getting back into the horror kick, and I was waiting for Saw 2 and Hostel, and this film was on HBO. So one night, while my parents were asleep, because who would want to watch this movie with their parents? Imagine that. It would be the most awkward movie to watch with them. They were asleep. I figured, why not give this a watch? And I gotta say, this is a creepy-ass fucking movie. And it's one of the most disturbing and most uncomfortable films to watch. But at the same time, I think it's a great movie. It's not a film that I can watch over and over again. I don't think it's meant to be that kind of film, but I definitely really like this film, and I can see why it has a fan base. I mean, there are others I would rather watch over this. I'd rather watch the Friday the 13th films. I'd rather watch the Hills Have Eyes remake, which is more disturbing than this, but this one creepy in its own way. But I would also rather watch the Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake. Yes, I know Uncle Bill and Creepy Kentuckian are coming for me for that, to say I like that more than this. I'd rather watch Hostel. I'd rather watch Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the beginning, which of course I have back there. I would also rather watch Event Horizon, Ghost Ship, many others that I feel are a lot more fun. They know what they are. But for what this is, and the fact that it knows that it's not trying to be fun and get a point through, I respect it in that aspect. And what is on screen really has to be commended too. So yeah, it isn't a film that I would place in my top 10 favorites, but I still think it's a great film, and I respect it for what it is, and I can definitely see why it has some fans in the horror community, and I'll get into all that later. But with the cast in this film, you got, as I said, Joe Spinell playing the main guy, Joe Zito, and the killer. May Joe Spinell rest in peace. He was in Rocky 1 and 2. He was the loan shark that Rocky worked with. He was in Nighthawks. He was also in The Godfather and The Godfather 2. I know he wanted to do a sequel to this movie, but then he died. It's very sad to hear that. You have Carolyn Monroe, who was the Bond girl in The Spy Who Loved Me with Roger Moore. She was in another slasher later on called Slaughter High. Tom Savini has a quick role in this, in that infamous scene that caused Gene Siskel to leave the theater, which I'll talk about later. I can't show it, though, because I don't want my video to get flagged by pussies on here. And other actors and actresses that are a bunch of no-names, because they're actually actresses from Lustig's porno films, as he didn't have enough money to hire anybody else. But getting into the film, the plot is basically we meet this guy named Frank Zito, played by Joe Spinell, who's this overweight, psychologically damaged guy who was born to a mother that worked as a hooker, who physically and verbally abused him, and she would lock him in closets when he did bad things. And at night, he's grown up now, and at night he goes out and murders hookers and other women, and he'll scalp the hair off them and goes and buys these mannequins that resemble the woman and basically puts the hair on them that he scalped off them and nails it to the mannequin. And the film is basically the day in life of a serial killer and how he operates. And he basically comes across this woman named Anna, played by Carolyn Monroe, who he ends up developing a romance for. So now Anna needs to basically find out who this guy is and put a stop to him. Will Anna be able to stop Frank? Will he live to strike again? Now, as you can tell by that plot, Maniac is not a movie that is for everybody. And that should be point number one, straight home. It's not the typical slasher venture like, say, Friday the 13th or A Nightmare on Elm Street. It's more in the vein of Wes Craven's movie, The Last House on the Left, or I Spit on Your Grave. It was more of those types of films. And you really have to have the stomach for it. And for me, it's kind of why, as much as I like this film, it's kind of one of those reasons why I have a lot of other films that I would rather watch over this, and I never held it to the standard that everybody else does, despite it being a classic, because I really like the film, but it's, as I say, it's not my number one pick for a movie. Hell, I'll even say I like Last House on the Left and Mother's Day a lot more than this, which the Last House on the Left remake has a lot to live up to. Same with My Bloody Valentine. But in a weird way, I can kind of see why people like this movie and why they're all about it. And I can understand the cult following that it has. Because this was around the time the slasher genre had really stepped up in production, and a lot more were being seen, and they were starting to throw unique ideas around. And this throws away the idea of focusing on the victims, but instead makes the killer the focus. And I like that aspect because you really start to see his mental state a little bit. How he operates and what his world was like as a child to get him this way. And I really like that for the same reasons I liked Manhunt 2's story. Even though Manhunt 2 has its problems. But that's one of the reasons why I was never as offended with the fact that you're having empathy for a serial killer in Manhunt 2 as you do with this. I mean, I said in the review, it's not about feeling empathy for him, but the game and this movie asks you, how do you feel as you watch what he does? Because the same applies here, and you really here have strange empathy for Frank as for what happened to him, and you kind of get the idea that this guy could have had a normal life. And it's really a study about how a family can create a killer and how a killer operates. And in those areas, it is so damn fucking creepy. And it's so unnerving. As you see him out at night, doing this stuff, walking around in that jacket and shoes and hat, and you see him talking to himself, and you kind of get the idea he's talking to his mother, and you see him in this rundown apartment with a shrine to his mom, and the mannequins representing the victims. It really shows the state of his mind. And the moments when you see him at night killing people, they really hit you hard. Especially since I know some people who have to walk home at night, and creeps like this are out there. I know the people in Stockton are having a rough time because we have that killer down there. I really hope they catch that bastard. But I can understand the fear that some people have with this idea, and I can understand it would be scary to some people in seeing more of the killer. I know that there's some people who don't like the slow aspects, like when he's out and about and he has his hair all slicked back, he's dressed a lot more casually, and he's earning Anna's trust. And at first I felt the same way, and I can understand that, but someone else pointed out how moments are also scary because he's being a killer at work in another way. Besides the whole part of him killing people, he's also out trying to earn a woman's trust. And he's easing them into his grasp. And that's scary. That goes back to what I said with Manhunt 2 about how, a killer could be that person you walk by in the grocery store. I love that. And I think the same applies here, because you never know who a killer is in real life. Your next door neighbor could be a killer. And I really like that aspect. It moves at a good pace, this movie. And as I said, it's not a film for everybody, considering its subject matter and the character of Frank Zito, and it's all portrayed in a nihilistic sort of grindhouse way. But at the same time, it's one of those films that you look at and you watch with just such weird amusement because of how creepy it is and how much it goes for it. And I like that in this film. And it really handles itself well. Even though it does get nihilistic, it knows how to tone itself down. And at the same time, it's telling a story. It's not like August Underground or any of those, or Martyrs, or that's Inside film. Those are more like extreme gore. This at least has a story to it, and I like that aspect. So the story itself is very good. I also think this is a greatly directed film. I will say, I think there have been movies before and after this that have done the guerrilla style a lot better, like Last House on the Left, as I think that had more to work with, and Wes himself knew how to work with a low budget, which is why I think that's better. Because this one, you can tell there's certain times here that they are working under a tight budget, and you can tell that New York was not kind to them. Like, there's this scene where it's a very creepy scene. I'm not going to diss this scene because it's a very good scene. It's very creepy, where this woman's walking home and he chases her into the subway, and he's trying to hide and he's following her. And basically, it's a creepily shot scene, but where it really suffers is the fact that in this part, it's very apparent that they're working under a tight budget. You can see people in the background, even when this is supposed to be a deserted subway. And it's definitely easy to see that. But for what it is, despite those moments, I still think this is a well-made film. It's shot very creepily, and William knows how to give the movie a raw atmosphere that really helps make the movie stick in your mind, being that its focus on the killer is just so unadulterated and so, like, I don't give a fuck how you feel attitude. It gives it its edge, and I really like that. And I am happy, too, that this DVD keeps in, like, the grain and everything, even though it's a step up from the VHS, which I'm happy about because I think it really gives the film its feel and its dark, grainish sort of feel. And it definitely works with the film. It works with the film's tone. It gives it its creep factor, too. It definitely doesn't shy away from gore. As I've said countless times throughout this video, William knows how to deliver on that front. So if you're into gore, it's all up in your face in this movie. But at the same time, if you're going into this thinking it's going to be fun, stay away. These are kills that are not meant to be sitting there and you're supposed to be laughing and having fun. They're really meant to leave an impact on you, especially the one in particular with Tom Savini. I won't say what it is, but they are shot rawly. They're more like a movie where you would watch somebody kill somebody, a snuff film, and it's a little bit in the way like how Last House on the Left did it. And I like that because I feel like it fits with this film's story and in the way of Mother's Day, which are shot in a way where it feels very raw and real. And I feel like if they went towards the way of, say, the Friday the 13th sequels, it would take away from the movie's tone and would make it feel uneven. And in those parts, it's accompanied by a great score by Jay Chataway that really adds to the film's tone, especially the end credits. So yeah, even though on a small budget, William definitely knows how to work with the budget given to him, and he definitely delivers on all front. He knows how to shoot gore, he knows how to shoot in a way where it doesn't feel cheap and phony, and he does some interesting shots with the camera too. I like this part where pretty much he has this girl with him and he's killing her, and you see, I don't know if this was like an accident, but I think it adds to the film a little bit, where you see like a body double, but I also kind of see it as him killing his mom, and I'll get to that scene later. Little tricks like that I think really add to the film's tone and really show instead of tell. So yeah, again, William deserves a lot of credit for how he did this film. And the cast, they're good for what they have to do. Most of them are porn actresses, so can't get much from porn actresses, and they're really in the background to be the killers, targets. Besides the main two, who are actually big names at the time. Carolyn Monroe, who I think does very well for what she has to do. You see her as this woman who's a photographer, a very good looking woman, I gotta say, in her time. I thought she was a likable lead. I thought her and Joe Spinell, who I'll get to, had some good chemistry. Not much is given about her character, but it's very clear she's not meant to be the main focus. That goes to the heart of this movie. Joe Spinell playing Frank, who is amazing. I have to say that. He gives Frank this nihilistic, creepy, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde sort of persona where you don't know what to expect from him, and just his appearance, how unkempt he is, and just how he changes from day to night. His character, like in the day, he may seem like this nice guy, like, oh, like the part with the girl on the bike, watch out, little girl. Or when he's with Anna, he's this nice guy. But when night falls and he becomes this crazed killer, those moments I thought were great. And he really puts himself into this role. You genuinely believe you're watching a serial killer at work. And just the scenes of him talking to himself in his apartment, and he's bringing in those mannequins, the whole fancy girls in their fancy dresses, and you see him nailing the scalp of the people. It's creepy. Or that one part where he starts cutting the scalp off the woman's head. It is crazy. And I think that has a lot to do with the fact that he's writing this. So he's really giving himself the creepiest moments. He doesn't play it over the top. He still portrays him as a natural serial killer that would exist in our world. But Joe just gives him this feel of unhinged and just unexpected, and just you never know when he's going to strike. Like this part with this, like the part I mentioned earlier about how it changes, the body double changes. Basically, this is the part. He's with this woman. They're getting ready to have sex. Then all of a sudden, his mood changes. He's like, you bitch! And then he starts choking her. And you see the body double looks like his mother, kind of showing his mental state a little bit. And I can't imagine anybody playing this but Joe. He really gives it his all. And it's really sad he was taken from us so soon, because around this time it really felt like he was starting to become a big name, especially being that he was involved with some big high-profile films. And I think this could have been the character that led to a franchise for him, especially since he wanted to do a sequel to this. So I think Joe Spinell deserves a lot of credit for this. And I definitely think the cast, for what they do well too. But of course, you cannot finish talking about this movie without talking about the thing that attracts so many people to this movie. The kills. Because, oh my god, this is a bloody ass fucking movie. Most of them involve a lot of stabbings, which I've seen before, so there's not much there. But the way they're shot and just the music over them makes them really uncomfortable to watch. And the one thing that must be said also is the effects by Tom Savini, which are great. Great practical blood squibs, blood spewing out of people, so many crazy ass kills. Like this one, like the couple on the beach, he literally chokes the guy, goes and stabs the woman. And then of course you get the big kill of this movie. that was inspired by The Son of Sam with Tom Savini playing Disco Boy. And I think you guys know where this is going. But before I actually get into this kill, because this is a crazy-ass kill, and I can't show anything here because I don't want this video to get flagged again, but I'm going to have to spoil this kill. So if you don't want to hear about the kill, if you want to be surprised, if you have not seen this film, turn down your volume, and pretty much when I say spoiler done, I'm going to put up here spoiler warning. But when that's done, I'll say spoiler done. But here we go. This is basically where Tom is in a car with this girl making out, and she sees Frank spying on them. And it's like, I want to go. And the minute he turns on the headlights, there he is outside, jumps on the car with this 12-gauge shotgun, and literally blows his brains all over the fucking car. I kid you not. He blows his brains all over the car. It's all over the seat, all over the roof of the car, all everywhere. And it is all done in slow motion. And you take in every damn frame of that kill in its full glory. It is that grim. And the music over it, I can't do it, but it's an amazing practical effect. And it ends in a way that I didn't even see coming, with some great gore in that area. That I won't spoil because it needs to be seen to be believed. So yeah, this is a really great movie. And while it's not my number one go-to film to watch when I want to see a horror movie, I definitely appreciate it for what it is and the impact it made in the 80s. I can see some of the flaws that some other people had, yeah, it is a little, some people may get turned off by the mean-spirited vibe. I can understand that, but it didn't bother me or anything. But I can see some people that being a turn-off for them as the nice guy when he's really a killer in real life. But those moments did not bother me as much as they used to. I mean, it has some flaws in other areas. The budget is definitely visible in some area. Most definitely in the subway chase where you could see the people in the background when it's supposed to be just those two in there. But it can be forgiven. But if you're a big film fan who likes to get sucked in, you'll get taken out. And that scene could have been edited a little better. There's also some times where they implement these psychological areas with him seeing stuff that I felt weren't needed, and I felt like they take away a little bit from the film. I won't spoil what they are, but they're parts of the film that I felt detracted from the experience and kept me from giving it the same amount of love that I think many people have given this film. But besides those problems, Maniac is deserving of its cult status. And it's definitely a film that, when it's bloody, it's bloody. When it's unnerving, it's unnerving. And it's damn well going to leave you shocked. And you may even need to take a shower. But it's deserving of its cult status. It may not be for everybody, but when it gets going, it gets going. And you get into it. And you'll begin to see the macabre beauty of it. So if you're one of those people who can stomach this, I highly recommend you check out Maniac. It may not be my all-time favorite horror film, but it offers up a lot to the eyes, and it will make you feel dirty. So when it comes down to it, I give Maniac an 8.9 out of 10. And it deserves it. And it therefore gets the Alexandra seal of approval. Definitely a cult classic. So yeah, that is Maniac right there. But that's my review for Maniac, and next time I'm going to do a review on Mira's been wanting to review that. I saw that over the summer, so I'm going to give my thoughts on it. Be on the lookout for that. I also have a review of Wishmaster coming, and for Halloween, also going to review this game, because I'm doing video games for Halloween as well. Condemned 2, that's one I've been wanting to review for a while, and Maximum Overdrive, been wanting to review that. But with all that aside, I will see you guys later. Let me know in the comments below what you guys think of Maniac. Did you guys stomach it? Did you guys like what it was going for? Did you understand it? I would love to know you guys' thoughts in the comments below. Be sure to rate, comment, and subscribe. And I'll see you guys next time for another shriek-tacular review on the wonderful world of YouTube. Bye.